Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and as we like to do at the end of the week, we like to bring on my other good buddy, pal, and chum. We used to do this before. He's the Patrick Starfish to my SpongeBob SquarePants 1, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, what's going on?
I don't want to be Patrick. Didn't I tell you this before? I don't want to be Patrick. I'm not Squidward. I'm not Mr. Krabs.
Well, no.
I don't think I want to be any. I can be the, like, even though it's a gender bender thing, I can be the squirrel girl. Okay.
Sandy, that's Sandy
karate.
Cheeks. Sandy Cheeks. Which I had to explain. I had to explain the pun that's in there to my 8-year-old daughter.
Well, let me put it this way. You didn't have to explain it. You chose to explain it.
No, well, she started to ask. She was kind of getting to that. What is it? I was trying to think, actually, the guy who runs the Chum Bucket. That might be more your your forte. But I'm drawing a blank as I usually do on
Mr.
names.
Krabs?
No, Mr. Krabs runs the Krusty Krab.
Oh, the Krusty Krab. Yeah, I don't remember.
Yes.
I'm not SpongeBob fluent.
It's okay. But we used to do that whole deal where it would be like, I was the Riggs to your Murtaugh or whatever. So I just felt like bringing it back today, buddy. So
All good.
Yep. Plankton, that's his name, Plankton. So we figured it out. Anyways, yeah, I don't know about Squidward, although within the grand scheme of things, when you've got they all live together, you could probably make Flash over there, the Patrick Starfish, and that could be SpongeBob. Although he might be a little cooler, but I can't be Patrick either.
I can make commentary on who I think Patrick is in our little group, but I won't.
Anyways, now that we've opened Pandora's box, why don't we open it all the way? Because a lot of it does sound like Patrick talking that's out there. Some of the stuff I was talking about, some of the terrible takes that go on in Steelers Nation, and well, let's just revisit. Maybe going back a few months, we're back into the Februarys or the Marches, and we were talking about all of the Steelers' supposed needs, free agency needs, draft needs. It was always draft needs because there's a ton of mock drafts that are out there. It annoys the crap out of me when you're, in January, end of January. Oh yeah, look, the Steelers. Even we're not immune to it. We've said some of the same things. Offensive line. That was our first thing. It was like offensive line was the number one thing in the mock drafts. And all of a sudden the Steelers didn't draft any offensive linemen. So we got to ask this question right here, right below here. Did the Steelers address everything they needed to in the offseason? And why don't we just start with, I know offensive line seemed important, but maybe there was one other thing that seemed far more important.
It always is.
And that's the quarterback position. How you feeling about, did the Steelers adequately address the quarterback position in the offseason for what they could do? I'm going to say yeah.
I'm going to say yes, based on, they did the things that they could do, right? They signed a guy who's a veteran. They drafted a guy who's going to be a rookie. They kept a guy who's a veteran on the team and knows the offense. They addressed the room in the sense of providing competition, keeping it open, allowing somebody to rise to the top and move forward. There's no way at this point to speculate whether or not they've got their next franchise quarterback. All we know is they did what they could do to try and address the position.
I'm in agreement with you. Now, they went and got the top free agent that was available. They had their pick of the litter, the top quarterback of the draft class, without having to give anything significant up for either one of them. They got Mitch Trubisky for $4 million this year. Well, it's cut over a little bit more. I think it is. Yeah, he's a little under round 4, or is he like 3.8? I know he was making a little less actual base salary than Mason Rudolph without incentives right now. So you got 2 guys there, and Mason also is the third one here. So you got the top free agent of the class, you got the top draft pick of the class, and you've got the guy that you drafted a few years ago and developed. And I'm going to say they adequately addressed it as best as, probably better than what most teams do. Some teams are just going to draft a guy, throw him in there. Some guys are just going to sign a guy, throw him in there. I mean, look at the Washington Commanders, for example, like with a Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke type situation. Now,
do I have to do
no,
that?
and rest in peace, to Dwayne Haskins, but also that was a mess with changing coaches and stuff like that. You look at the Jets, draft a guy, throw him out there. Just the Jaguars, draft a guy, throw him out there, and hope he's the guy. And I know some people are thinking that way with Kenny Pickett, that he's just going to jump on the field right away. No, they have the flexibility to kind of go any direction here. They can go with the guy they developed. If he sucks, then they don't need to use him. They could go with the top free agent. If he sucks, they don't need to use him. They could go with the guy that was the top of his class draft pick, first round pick. And if he sucks, they don't need to use him either. And then they could just start over next year. And they've got the time and the flexibility, I think, to do that. I'm going to say they adequately addressed the quarterback position. And by the way, this is kind of like almost a twofer. We're probably going to have a retrospective on Kevin Colbert here shortly as his contract expires, and they find that they find the heir to the empire. So even more, Brandon Hunt, I think, getting a second interview now too. So we'll look back on that, because it's kind of like you got these last 2 draft classes is what really sets up this season, because Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris and Kendrick Green and Dan Moore, those are all guys that you're counting on having big seasons this year, in addition to everyone you just took this year. So going into who they took this year, you've got George Pickens, you've got Kelvin Austin the third. The Steelers had lost Juju Smith-Schuster, Ray McLeod, and James Washington. So 3 wide receivers out of the 5 they had last year. They didn't roster 6. They only had 5, I believe. So Ray was the return specialist, so we could kind of toss that into, well, we'll talk special teams. I guess that goes with it. I think they adequately addressed that with Gunnar Olszewski. I think that's okay. Yep. So that could be a push or a shove. I mean, what else do you expect from kick returner? Kick returner better get out to the 20-yard line. That's about it.
Or 25 at least.
Well, I hate when they come out and they don't get to the 25. I almost feel like, because you're automatically getting it at the 25. Yeah, it's kind of a waste. But this guy's done it, and he's made a Pro Bowl doing it with Belichick and the New England Patriots. So you got to give a little bit of credibility there. So I guess the special teams part's addressed. Do we feel comfortable with punter at this point?
No.
But was it really a priority though this offseason?
No,
do you think? I don't think so.
Look, all we can hope is that the punter that they have does better. I don't know. I was very excited about the big fat punter last year, and I'm not as excited about the big fat punter this year. So I don't know.
I get it, and that's quite all right. Nothing wrong with that. But okay, so I bounce back, since Gunnar probably won't be playing a whole heck of a lot, and you got to have just the right amount of bodies for, well, let's say this guy, Mitchell Trubisky, to throw the ball to. Let's just say he's the guy. Could be Kenny Pickett. I always want to call him Kenneth Pickett, but I don't know if that's proper. But this guy, you can call Mr.
Kenneth is proper. Kenny is not.
Mr. Biscuit. It's Kenny Wood now, according to Flash. He's got the sign up. So, anyways, he's got the arrow pointing at his on his set. So, anyway, I got a little lost track here, but they lost 3 wide receivers. There was a lot of debate as to whether or not this offseason that they could replace said 3 wide receivers. Let's take a look at who's still there. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Anthony Miller's still there from last season, former second-round pick who played with one Mitchell Trubisky, Mr. Biscuit, over with the Chicago Bears. And then they added Miles Boykin, formerly from the Baltimore Ravens, somebody they looked at in the draft. Bigger guy, pretty fast guy. Got him off of waivers. He's going to be in there competing with the 2 draft picks I just mentioned, Pickens and Austin. Do you think, Brian, they adequately addressed the wide receiver room this offseason?
I think the wide receiver room got better. So yes, absolutely. I think they adequately addressed it. They probably did more than they expected to be able to do with it. Um, when everybody was very doom and gloom about Juju leaving and James Washington leaving, and I get it. Juju was nice; he's a nice player, but
James Washington, not so much. I think.
No, James Washington. That's just stop. But I actually think you get a lot more out of George Pickens than you were ever going to get out of either Juju or James Washington. I think Austin can be sneaky good, and I think that with those two picks, they set themselves up if Deontay goes AB on them.
Or what do you mean by AB wants show me the money?
I need more money, or like a crazy amount of money. In other words, I done lost my damn mind, and I need all the damn money.
Yeah, I don't know about. We really put him in the same category as Antonio Brown.
It's AB in the sense of you're crazy.
We haven't mentioned this yet, but do you sign him back for a day? Now he's pleading to retire a Steeler. Dude, we got to lick those wounds. They're not. They're still fresh.
I am all about reconciliation and moving forward. He's done. And if he's done, that means he's going to be out of the media attention center. Fine. If the trade-off is we signed you back, you retired, you got your little hoo-hoo, ha-ha, goodbye, and you're gone, then fine, please. I just kind of want him to go away.
Yeah, and my dude, I love this guy until, I don't know, did Burfict knock him silly or something? I mean, I don't know when it went off the rails for Antonio Brown, but retire a Steeler, absolutely. Dude, it's not going to happen right now when you're still like lobbying people to play in the NFL. I'm wearing a Lamar Jackson jersey. Just not even like, was that even a full month ago? It was like, let's hook up. We can make some magic. I'm like, dude, they're not going to throw you the ball. I hope you can still, at 34 years of age or whatever he is now, like run an end around or whatever. I don't think he ever had. That was never, AB Sting was never like the 40 times speed like a Darius Hayward Bay. It was always how his separation, his route running. And that's what really made him elite. And then he had that second level. Like once he got going, it was like the guy got faster the further down the field he got. So anyways, I think this room's the best that it's been in quite some time. I think Pickens and Austin both make it that way. And I think they're both in the same kind of mold or category as a Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool, and could very well replace either one or both of them. And it'll be interesting to see how Miles Boykin or Anthony Miller, if they crack the roster, and what they might do. And I think there'll be 6 wide receivers that are kept if you're looking at a way too early on the 53-man roster, just because Gunner is a specialist. I don't think they didn't sign him to not give him a chance. I don't think Austin's presence or anything like that. I know a lot of people are going to say Austin's small. Well, he's 5'9", and AB was what, 5'10"? Sanders was 5'10" too, Manny Sanders. But they had a little bit more on them. Maybe he can put on about 10 pounds of muscle. Maybe it doesn't affect his speed or shiftiness or whatever, and then he'll be right in the same size category. I mean, this is like Kenny Pickett's hands grew a quarter of an inch. This guy puts lifts or wears a special set of cleats. All of a sudden he's 5'9.5" or whatever. I mean, maybe his arms are a little longer. They measure like the arm from the shoulder down to the wrist or whatever to the tips of his fingers. Maybe he's got the Sammy Coates fingers. Remember we thought that was going to help him catch the ball, actually?
We did. We're like, that could help him.
I blame that one on the professor, actually.
They did not help him.
But yes, wide receiver room better. Yeah, I think so. Like James Washington, as much as people, they're going to say, oh, he got misused and everything like that. I don't know. He's probably out of the league here. I hate to say it, but he doesn't. Sometimes it's a jack of all trades, master of none. And sometimes as a wide receiver, you have to be a master of something in order to make it. And we just didn't see the separation there. We saw that he can make the combat catches. He can get up. It didn't materialize just enough. And he got passed by other guys who continued to get drafted and jumped them for playing time. And that's just something that happens. We'll see. It's not to say the Steelers can't add other wide receivers here in the future, but I think this room's pretty good. I think it's going to come together pretty well with the quarterbacks that are in that room as well. And again, maybe there isn't like that main chess piece that you got out there. We all assume Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 1, You never know. This could be a situation like last year in Cincinnati where Jamar Chase comes out and he's like, nope, I'm wide receiver 1. Sorry, T. Higgins. Sorry, Tyler Boyd. Get out of my way. I'm the man here. And that very well could happen. Pickens has the tools to be able to do just that. So we talked receivers. We talked special teams just a little bit there. The one we just kind of mentioned and glossed over, and now we're going to boomerang back to is we had that situation. It's kind of tough to replace. Got Marquise Pouncey and Ben Roethlisberger walking off into the sunset one year after the other. David DeCastro, Alejandro Villanueva. We were all worried about offensive line. We thought it could be better last year, and it wasn't. And some people had forgotten that they have added a few bodies, and it's still curious to see how it shakes out. They brought Chuks Okorafor back because there was nobody in free agency that was worth, even for the cost that they got him for, that was worth bringing back over him. Dan Moore Jr. is still there. Second-year player, should make a jump. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson. They're going to leave Green in at center. I don't see Mason Cole being the center. I don't have that gut feeling, but we'll see when they start working out. We'll see who's taking the reps and where. James Daniels, he's going to take David DeCastro's old spot, of which Trey Turner could not. Right. And I think that will help everybody right away, just solidifying that as well. So offensive line addressed well enough. Are we a little on offensive line moves?
The answer is no. Is it addressed? Yes. Is it addressed well enough? No. But is it better than it was last year? James Daniels by himself makes it better than it was last year.
Totally.
But I don't think that, in fact, it's good enough yet.
Yeah, I'm still real hesitant on center play. And we saw bad snaps, and that's what really, really does it for me. It's like you're not going to be helping Trubisky, Rudolph, or Pickett if you're throwing the ball over their head into the dirt. And Ben knows he had that mental clock where he's played for 18 years, and he knows, get rid of the ball now because Myles Garrett is going to be breathing on me. One of these pass rushers, Ravens, Bengals, everybody's loaded. You know what I mean? It's an arms race, like I said. And it's not to discount all the other teams they'll end up playing. I mean, they will probably see Khalil Mack if he's healthy on Christmas Eve. So you've got other players that they're going to run into over the course of this season. But the whole point is that the rest of the NFL has pass rushers. That 2 seconds getting rid of the ball. If you put it in the dirt and it takes 2 seconds to pick it up, that is not going to help any of these guys that are if they're under center. They might be behind center a little bit in a little bit of a shotgun type of formation. Yeah, I'm a little leery on offensive line, Brian, because for Kendrick Green especially, we'll see what happens at left guard. Kevin Dotson, or do they slide Green over to play a left guard? I'm not really as concerned with the tackles, which might seem a little bit awkward. I'm more just concerned with center, because the center play for the Steelers has always been like legendary, Hall of Fame, gold jacket caliber, going back to Mike Webster, Jermani Dawson, Marquise Pouncey. You even had Justin Hartwig and the other guy. Geez, I remembered Jeff Hartiggs. I usually forget Hartwig when I'm talking about this. There's really hasn't been a whole lot of stinkers other than Sean Mahan, which they gave one season to. And that's why I was wondering if they would pull the plug on Green right now. And I know we're going to get way more in depth on this, but it does kind of just surprise me that they didn't look at offensive line or look at center. But when you look at the overall draft, and they went quarterback and they went wide receiver, and after losing wide receivers, and then they went defensive line, which we'll talk about briefly here in a second, especially with a guy that was highly rated, maybe a defensive line that could be an error to it or a Hayward down the road, especially, Hayward's getting up there and Tyson Alulu already is.
Don't you be talking smack about the OG.
Oh, well, the OG just like fine wine, though. He gets better as time goes on, so I really cannot complain about him whatsoever. But one area people will complain about, they complained about running back last year. Najee Harris, first-round pick. You don't ever take somebody in the first round. And you see what he was able to do even behind a porous offensive line. So you hope that plays a little bit better and then he could create something. There's nobody behind him. They still haven't signed like any kind of veteran. Are we still sticking to Benny Snell football, or We think Anthony McFarland can add something. I know we've talked about Durant from Duke and the other guy, was it Whalen? I'm trying to think. There was two that they just signed recently, the UDFAs with the running backs, and I'm not feeling so strong. I think they need somebody else back there. I know that Mike Tomlin and company will run the wheels off of whoever they're handing the ball off to, like Najee Harris, but that terrifies the hell out of me.
The only reason they need somebody is if he gets hurt.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with that, but then when he gets hurt, what are you going to end up doing?
Well, just as you would with anybody else. Nobody's got, well, except Cleveland, who bought all the running backs.
I would
Nobody's
say
got
true.
two starting caliber running backs. Well, and Baltimore, Cleveland and Baltimore, who all they have is running backs, and not anybody else. So
I'm trying to think. I want to say that maybe the Colts, were they the ones that drafted Spiller? I mean, a few of them, they have some rookies in place.
Yeah.
And other teams use a committee instead of a bell cow. That's what more or less scares me, because if you're going to give Najee Harris like 400 touches or something, it doesn't necessarily scream to me that, I don't know, durability is my main concern. And he had 307 rush attempts last season, and he had 94 targets, 74 receptions. You know, that's still not like Le'Veon Bell territory, 400 and that's in 17. But they also didn't emphasize the run as much as they liked too. So if they're going to do that, you get Benny Snell going in there. I think Benny Snell's been put in an awful position. I'm like, jury's not completely out, I think, on him, because it's like, hey, it's 3rd and 1. Put Benny Snell in the backfield for whatever dumb reason.
The jury's out. It's out. The jury is out on Benny Snell.
Well, hold on a second. Benny Snell has showed us a few times he's capable of getting 100-yard seasons or 100-yard games. Compared with what everyone else has been doing, I'm willing to at least give him the benefit of the doubt as a backup. I don't want him to be a starting running back.
Right. I don't think you're going to question that he probably will be the backup unless a name that Tomlin falls in love with comes off as the preseason progresses. I think you probably have Benny Snell unless one of these young guys outplays him. But no, Benny Snell can't carry the load.
No, not for a whole season. And we've seen that. But I mean, James Conner struggled a little bit there. Najee had his struggles last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not gonna worry overly about the guy who's gonna play 5 snaps a game.
No, that's incredible. No, yeah, you're right, and that could easily go Trey Edmonds, or it's Jalen Warren out of
Gotcha.
Oklahoma State. That was the name I was looking for. Mateo Durant is the one from Duke. Yeah, absolutely. They might be able to go in there and do just as much. We brought up the nightmare Terrell Watson just the other day. He was able to get that short yardage here or there. So it could be a dime a dozen thing. The reason I bring this up is that we saw some pretty stupid takes because Marlon Mack got signed, who's had his injury problems. That's why the Indianapolis Colts ended up drafting Jonathan Taylor in the first place. Also, who was the other one that just somebody got signed somewhere else too? Oh, Philip Lindsay. And it was Pony or one of these other, Yinzer talking heads that are out there that drive me nuts. And they're like, oh, why couldn't the Steelers just go ahead and do that or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, for the same reason you just said. This isn't territory where they're splitting carries with Najee Harris.
Right.
But I just want him to be able to be a little fresh. And I also hope that we've learned a lesson on pitch count and with Bell and leaving him in there in the fourth quarter when we don't need to be stats chasing for any particular reason. Just that bothered me too. And it seems to be where Reggie Nelson or whoever took his knee out from his knee years ago, in one of the last games of the season, and it just left him high and dry more than once when Bell had gotten hurt. And it helped when they had D'Angelo Williams. We used to call him 1A and 1B. So
it's not that it's a bad thing. It's not, I'm not going to worry about it. And your point is correct. If they're ahead in a bunch of games and they're in the fourth quarter and the game's not in question, either it's not in question because they got no shot at winning, or it's not in question because they're so far ahead, then sure, go ahead and put, your backup in. But Is there anything in the past 4 years of Steelers history that indicates to you that those are the kind of games we're going to see?
Hey, you never know, man. I mean, stranger things have happened. The one that really surprised me a couple of years ago was Carolina Panthers, and McCaffrey came in and they like scored on that first drive. That was like a Thursday night game, or
Yep.
they answered at least. I think it was like 7-7. And you're just like, oh man, this is gonna be a rough one. And then they just blew the doors off the Panthers, like with no effort. Josh Dobbs
Well,
got a few
there's
reps.
the interception returns for touchdowns. There's all
Yeah.
the Kiesel fumble thing and all kinds of crazy stuff in there. And it just got out of their hands for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you where this is going to come from. Their preseason: Seattle Seahawks, Jacksonville Jaguars, Detroit Lions. And, if you take a look at some of those rosters, and I'm going to pull them up real quick, just we're going to do a little predictive look ahead into the crystal ball or the magic 8 ball here. Let's see. Let's see if I could actually get the load. That's always the fun part. So let's see. Seattle Seahawks, I know they just drafted someone. That's the reason why I'm bringing this up in particular, because I think all of these teams, Lions and who did I say, the Jaguars, maybe not so much the Jaguars, but it all depends because Travis Etienne didn't really play last year. So they may have an extra body. Oh yeah, James Robinson's just sitting there. They took Snoop Connor in the draft. So they got a couple of running backs in the stable, a few horses there. The Lions, let's see. Lions have got DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams. Yeah, they probably aren't moving off. They have that Godwin, whatever, put up big numbers against them in that tie game. And that's somebody where if you see them enough up close and personal, perhaps that's somebody that if they get cut, they're like, hey, this guy didn't look too bad. We're kind of scouting him. We saw him on the other side of the field. The Seattle Seahawks have Rashad Penny still hanging around. They drafted Kenneth Walker in the second round, and Chris Carson still sitting there. Travis Homer, who's been around there. He was a former 6th-round pick. These are the kind of players that maybe end up on the bottom end of a roster and get plucked. So I think they will be looking around, and that's not to discount anyone within the AFC North also. Like you said, the Browns. They also have – Browns ended up picking up somebody else too, because they had DeForest, what's his name, that was running pretty solid there for them. And I'm going to pull them up as well. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, and then they drafted Jerome Ford, Demetric Felton, and John Kelly are all sitting there on that roster. So you never know who you might snipe off of your own competition that we just saw it happen with James Bradbury.
Yeah.
Going from the Giants to the Eagles for $10 million. Team friendly deal. That's what the Steelers are going to get him on. That team friendly $10 million drives me nuts. When everybody's always talking about that. So backup running back, blah, 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 blah. But that's a good segue, Brian, for the defense. I'm kind of just lumping it all together because at one point we were looking at the secondary and thinking, what's going to go on here? Terrell Edmonds, a free agent. Joe Hayden, free agent. You do have Cam Sutton. You did have Minka Fitzpatrick maybe coming back, but you didn't know. Akilla Witherspoon had a pretty good showing throughout the year when he finally got some traction. And they went and signed Levi Wallace, and they ended up getting Edmonds back. So now they've got like 3 corners. They got the starting safeties from last year. I mean, they did move on from Joe Hayden, which, I'm not too terribly bent out of shape after. If they go into camp, he's still unsigned. He's not anywhere. If they go into camp, and they feel that they need a body, and Joe is willing to come in for way less than what he was making. Well, he was up to like a cap hit 13, 14 million.
Yeah, it was big.
Year. Pretty big, but I mean, his average was somewhere between 10 to 12 a season. So, Joe, you know what? We've got all these other corners, and we don't need you as a full-time player, and you're 33 years old. Like, they did this with Willie Gay. You're willing to come in and be rotational for $4 or $5 million or something like that. Perhaps that's something that they do, but I felt comfortable with the secondary. When we're talking about the linebackers, how can you not feel comfortable with a defensive player of the year? When you're talking about TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, I'm extremely high on. Devin Bush, I know some people are upset and they're like, well, will he ever return to form? Well, this is his year to prove it. People are saying, hey, with these knee injuries and stuff, maybe it takes a year, maybe he never does, but he's got that benefit of the doubt. They still have Spillane, Robert Spillane sitting there, and they added this guy, Miles Jack, who may be one of the most under the radar signings, especially for the money that he took, $8 million. He's making less than Joe Schobert would have been making. And the Steelers land this deal. Yeah, Schobert was over 10, or he was approaching 10.
That's right. I remember that now. Yeah.
At least that was the savings. I think they still took a hit on him. It might have been 12, and they were saving 10. And I said, who are you going to get that fits the bill for the same price that's going to be maybe better? And we were looking at who was available. Well, Jack wasn't available yet. And then whatever this clown show is down there in Jacksonville did all of us a favor and may have just handed the Steelers their next James Ferrier. Dare I say?
Dare you say?
Dare I say? It may be just served up on a silver platter for them. And Brian, as I'm getting long-winded, we need to know the whereabouts of this man right here, number 91, Stephon Tuitt. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but Alu back, Hayward back. You add all of this in the mix, you may have all of your defensive linemen. If you don't have all of your defensive linemen, there's still Chris Wormley, DeMarvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk, Montravius Adams. I think the Steelers defensively, as overall defensive line, I think was a little bit of a concern offseason.
Because you don't know that you still. Yeah, I think they addressed that with Leal. The reason it was a concern is you didn't know what the status of Stephon Tuitt's going to be. We still don't know the status of Stephon Tuitt. And we probably won't until all of a sudden we do. But I think they addressed any real concern with the defensive line by drafting Leal. Alu will still be a good piece. I mean, yeah, you got to worry about how well a guy his age comes back from a broken ankle like that. My biggest concern is still probably the secondary, not because I don't have faith and confidence in the guys that they brought back, but you're basically taking flyers on 1 year performance for Levi Wallace, for Ahkello Witherspoon, and do they continue to grow and perform for you in your system, or do they backslide? So I'm optimistic but concerned.
Well, I like the fact that they didn't just bring back Witherspoon by himself. They also went and got Wallace. And bringing Edmonds back on a 1 year, and I mean, it was smart business decisions by the Steelers, too. I mean, he didn't land the type of paycheck he was probably looking for elsewhere in free agency. And since they didn't 5-year option him, they got a bargain on him. So it doesn't hurt to have him. I've always been a proponent of his. Can you upgrade? Sure. But look what it was costing to get the Honey Badger to come over. Yeah. I mean, it was, he was 3 years, 33 million, maybe a little more. So I'm okay. I'm completely okay to answer the final question here. The title of the show. Did the Steelers address everything they needed to in the offseason? Maybe. We're still feeling maybe the offensive line. I think secondary's fine. I think all the linebackers, inside linebacker was maybe a worry. Defensive line was maybe a worry. Do you really need to stack the roster with the backup running back? Nah. Those 3 wide receivers that were gone, perhaps an improvement. Quarterback, post-Ben era, what else are you going to do? We already mentioned it. You got Trubisky, you got Mason, you got Pickett. Kenneth Shane Pickett, by the way. I did look it up. Oh.
Don't go full Shane. Don't go full Shane.
Well, won't do so. Won't do so. So, what do you think? You're probably. Oh. Hold
on a second.
It's the bat phone.
Hello, Mr. Rooney. Yeah. Okay. He says they did enough.
Hey, where's your sign at? You have
my sarcasm sign. Yes. It's buried under my camera, so I can't get it out.
Oh, that's just a shame. It needed to be there for that one. Was that an actual telemarketer call you just got?
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty kind one compared to what I usually do to them.
I didn't answer. I hung up.
That's pretty good. Well, we're up against it. A little bit shorter of a show. Brian and myself busy as usual, but have to bring you the hashtag content. I don't have the hashtag.
I'm going to be in Pittsburgh on Sunday.
Oh, are you?
The Monroeville Mall for the Pittsburgh Monroeville Expo, so I can get myself some nice TJ Watt signed memorabilia, get Chad Brown on the linebacker helmet, and get me some Aaron Smith stuff.
You know what? That's right. I forgot you had mentioned Chad Brown, and that's a unicorn when it comes to getting anything signed for the Steelers. That's one of the few guys they ever let go in free agency that actually continued to do extremely well. I could only think of there's not even a handful, maybe. I know Emmanuel Sanders is another, and that was kind of one of the ones they couldn't keep salary cap wise or otherwise. But Brian, thanks for joining me once again. Any closing thoughts, my friend?
No, I'm too tired to think.
Which usually ends up being the case, but we won't drone on too much. Thanks, everyone, for your participation and support, especially the last few episodes have been through the roof. So we truly appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're new here, welcome. You've made it. You're going to bump the 2% up to 3% now. We always say that about 98% of the people have already tuned off by now. But that's okay. We love all of you that stick around to the very end, our 2%ers, as we always do. Brian's going to pull out the old timer leather helmet there. That looks very, very funky. It almost looks like something out of Monty Python.
It does. I was thinking the same thing. I feel like it's like, I want a shrubbery. Give me a shrubbery.
We're the knights who say neat. Oh man, I got to pull that up again. That is speaking of unicorns, that's a show or a movie digitally. It's like to just find it. It's like they don't pack in a code or anything, and even just they don't play it very often. I don't know. It's just it's obscure with I think it's a lot of the licensing that has to go on with it. Yeah, it's just. So I know there's unscrupulous methods just as there are to find the Steelers games and whatnot. You don't have to wink, wink. I know, folks. I'm just talking about, staying within the confines of not getting in trouble on a recorded product. So anyways, we appreciate your support here with Steel City Underground. His name's Brian E. Roach. My name's Joe Kuzma. And as always, each and every time we close out the show by encouraging our viewers and listeners out there to be safe, be good, and we will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.